meeting is being recorded.
Oh, that's on your side. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Free Lady. This is a podcast to help free your mind. We go over my stories, other people's stories, to have you connect with somebody, have you connect in the safe space and be encouraged by not feeling alone, and that you are able to listen to other people's stories and feel like you have a sense of hope, learning to love yourself and learning that you can get out of whatever mental space that is not serving you anymore. Again, I am not a licensed therapist. I am here just to speak through love, through my story and other people's stories. So that way you can get all the help that you need. If you need help, always reach out to a professional. If you need help and guidance on who you need to reach out to, of course, reach out to myself or others, and we can direct you in the right area. So today I have a special guest. Kassie is on my show today. I'm very excited to have her. So thank you, Kassie.
Thank you.
Kassie and I, we know each other through our relationship coaching group with Scott and Ann Travis. If you guys are struggling in your marriages, or you're a new couple like Dan and I and want to build a strong foundation in the very beginning, whatever you need in your marriage, your relationship with your partner, it's a great space to be in. And of course, they're also in the Lion's Den and all kinds of other groups. And so we are out here bettering ourselves every single day.
Right.
Yeah. And so I'm really happy to get to know Kassie, because we're in a very, very close, circle of friends and family, really.
Close community of people.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And so, of course, we're going to start off with three things we're grateful for today. I am grateful that I made it to this podcast on time, because this chick's hair that I was doing, I was like, oh girl, but we did it. We nailed it. It's awesome. And I'm thankful to be around other people tonight. I'm going to a game night tonight with some friends, my coworkers, so getting out, which is nice. And then I'm also just really grateful that this podcast just keeps going and, sharing stories and everything like that. So, Kassie, what are you thankful for today?
Well, today I'm grateful that it's finally warming up. We're about 75 degrees today after it's just been a cold, wet, rainy winter. I mean, yeah. It's Arizona. We're not used to cold. We don't know what to do with it.
Right. Yeah.
I think 2 weeks ago we had snow on the mountains around us, and we were like, yeah, I don't like this.
Dang.
Another thing I'm grateful for is I'm grateful for my husband. Obviously, he's amazing and takes really good care of me. Fixed my hair before we started.
Literally with this spit, you guys. He was like,
he
was like, hair and makeup on board.
Flicking back. Yeah, it's nice out today. So when I was out and about, I had my windows down. So I had I don't know what was happening. And then I'm grateful that our business is actually doing well. We're trending above our goal every month so far this year. So we're rocking and rolling.
That's amazing. So Kassie, talking about your business, what do you do?
Cigars. Our business is Cigar Company. We started out as a online cigar subscription box, 3 cigars every month shipped right to your door. There's a little card with some information and kind of tasting notes to kind of teach about the cigars. We recently, I want to say last summer, we branched out into a full-on online store, and the ultimate goal is to open up a cigar bar. We're just looking for an investor to get somebody to do that so we can get rocking and rolling and make a bunch of money.
Heck, yes, I love it. I love it. They're doing what they love.
And of course, sharing our love of cigars with the world.
Oh man. I mean, there's nothing like having a good cigar in your life. I definitely dabble in that area whenever I can, especially if I'm camping or celebrating. Like, it's just so nice. It's just, I don't know. And I feel like, it brings conversation, right? Like you
Absolutely
talking about like the flavors that you're smoking, and it just brings some community around. It gets people relaxed, because they're like chilling with the cigar, maybe.
Yeah, Frank always calls it the great equalizer. Yeah. Because you'll have people from all different walks of life coming into a cigar shop together or around a campfire or whatever the situation. And
Fabulous.
We're all on the same level when we're sitting there smoking a cigar together.
Yeah. It's fabulous. I love that. And I love that you guys do that. It's funny because one of my very unique memories about Lions Den Live last year, and I had no idea who you guys were, but I remember Anthony had cigars and you guys had
Yeah.
cigars, and I was smoking. Anthony gave me a cigar, and all of a sudden people were singing happy birthday, and I was like, what in the world is going on? Happy birthday that weekend, right?
It was Michelle's birthday.
Oh, okay. Somebody's birthday. And Frank was like getting crazy. And he's like, yeah. And I was like, dude, that guy, yeah, he's having a good time.
Yep.
I'll never forget it, man. It was so awesome.
Well, and Sean completely put us on the spot there. We brought, our little case of cigars for us.
Yeah.
And at the end of Lions in Life, he's like, all right, Frank's here. He's got cigars. Find him. And we're like, no, we got to give cigars to the 1,000 people that are here.
Right.
And Anthony actually saved us. He went down the street and found more cigars because we ran out, or he took them from his personal stash or something. I don't know. But he came and he brought more cigars for us to give out to everybody and kind of saved the day. So shout out to Anthony.
Shout out to Anthony, man. That was so nice. I was like, this is awesome. He was playing his drums and people were drinking and having cigars and just celebrating the massive energy and experience of expanding our minds. I mean, what an amazing.
I loved it. I had so much fun. I lost my voice that weekend.
Oh yeah. I think I just my brain just went like this.
Yep.
So big. And so anyways, you guys, Kassie has a really special story that, she wants to share. I'm really proud of her for sharing her story. She's had a pretty traumatic childhood, but she's here today living her best life, living her dream, has the man of her dreams, being super successful in her business, which is, fucking fantastic. I love seeing you guys grow. So Kassie, tell us a little bit about what you went through as a child.
Okay. So growing up, my parents were drug addicts.
Mm-hmm.
When I was young and at the time, I didn't understand the scope of it or how far into drugs that they were in. I just knew that they smoked. Right. But as I got older, teenager into my 20s, I started realizing, okay, they're doing more than what I think. Because they would always go and sneak in their bedroom and hide for a few minutes and then come out and they're like, chill. I remember a few times growing up where we'd be driving home from grandma and grandpa's house and they thought my brothers and I were asleep in the back of the car, and I'd wake up and see them passing a joint back and forth between each other with their 3 kids in the car. When I was probably 15, I found a makeup compact kind of hidden under a Kleenex box full of cocaine. Oh, and when I asked my mom about it, she said she was holding it for someone. Because, everybody who does drugs and gets caught is holding it for someone. It's not theirs. Right. And I mean, they always just smoked weed like it was cigarettes, like it was no big deal. I remember my mom could put her entire finger up her nose because she had killed everything in there from doing so much cocaine and who knows what else. Wow. And I would give her a teaser before I realized what it was. I'm like, are you trying to scratch your brain by doing that? Yeah. And then shortly after Frank and I met, we've been together for 11 years now. Shortly after he and I met, I was working with a girl and she told me about this book that she had read. The book is called Perfect Daughters. I don't remember the author's name off the top of my head, but she introduced me to this book, and just reading the jacket cover, the inside of it, just kind of the synopsis of the book, it just hit me because it talked about how daughters are expected to kind of exceed certain expectations or meet these expectations that their parents have. And then when your parent is an alcoholic or a drug addict, you have to go above and beyond for that. Right. And it just struck a nerve with me because I always had to take care of my younger brothers, and my youngest brother used to call me mom. Yeah. And after that, after seeing just that jacket cover of that book, things just started kind of coming together in my mind, and I was like, I got to get away from this. Yeah. It was toxic for me. My nephews were all babies at that point, and I'm like, when you have babies in your house, you don't need to be smoking weed where they can hear you or they're exposed to it.
Right.
or potentially pick it up. And what do babies do? They put stuff in their mouth.
Yeah.
They don't need to be
True.
around that. So that was when I was like, all right, I need to separate myself and walk away. And I did. And it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
Right.
I, at one point, was so depressed that I was very close to being hospitalized. This is my family. This is everyone I've ever known. They're the reason that I'm here.
Mhm.
And now they're not in my life anymore.
Mm.
And I sought therapy because I knew that I needed to talk to somebody and get this out
Right.
and figure out how to process all of the emotions that I was feeling,
Right.
even identify the emotions that I was feeling. And I had one therapist who actually told me, oh, well, you must be an addict too if your parents are addicts. And I'm like,
Wow.
I'm actually trying to get away from that, but thanks for that. So over the course of, I don't know, 3 to 5 years, I started seeing a therapist and just opening up and talking to people about things,
Yeah.
including probably, God, 3 or 4 years ago now, I talked to one of my aunts. Her and I have always been close.
Right.
And I said to her, because she had told me, backing up a little bit, she had told me at one point how when I was like a toddler, maybe still in diapers, she used to come to the house where we lived. My mom and my dad and me, my brothers weren't born yet, and pick me up because she'd get there and I would be in my crib by myself, either playing happily, just keeping myself entertained, or I'd be in a dirty or wet diaper crying and my mom's passed out in the next room. So it finally clicked to me a few years ago, and I called my aunt and I said, is it possible that my mom was doing heroin at that time? She goes, I mean, it's possible, but at that time they were doing meth. I said, okay, that makes sense because you don't pass out like that from cocaine or weed.
Right. Right.
And it just was like one of those things where I was just like, I guess kind of validated in knowing that this is what they did. And I wasn't angry anymore about that. It just was, okay, now I know, now I have a better understanding.
Right.
And I got myself out of that.
Yeah.
And I've even said before, like, look at the life that Frank and I have built together. Look at the business. Look at where we are now. If I hadn't walked away from that, if I'd still been sucked into that drama on a daily basis, I don't think we would be here right now.
Yeah.
We may not even be together.
Yeah.
Huh?
You are the change.
Yes. And like Ed Milet says, be the one.
Right. Right. So how did you feel like, do you feel like you were really noticing these things as you got older, like just, feeling like you're second, like feeling unloved? Because obviously drugs are going to be their number one,
I wouldn't say that I necessarily felt unloved, but I definitely didn't feel seen.
Right.
And I remember telling my mom at one point, I'm like, you never tell me you're proud of me.
Right.
So I always did really well in school, A's and B's. I was an athlete. I always took care of my younger brothers, took care of the house, took care of the dog.
Wow.
So it just was like, can I go be a teenager now? Can I go be a kid?
Yeah.
And it was, no, like, I need you at home taking care of your brothers, because she was doing whatever she was doing.
Right.
So yeah, I didn't feel seen or like I existed at times.
Yeah, it made you probably step into this role of having to be so mature at like such a young age, right? And you're just like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Like, you're just trying to do the best that you can do for your brother and for yourself, and taking responsibility when you should only be responsible for doing good in school and like coming home to your family and everything like that. Like, that really can take a toll on somebody, and it can really go like two different ways. And what age did you really start feeling that you had to have this responsibility, because seeing your brothers, because I'm assuming are you the oldest?
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah. My brothers are 1.5 years and 7 years younger.
Okay.
So I want to say it was probably around age 12 or 13 that I really started feeling it, because it was the time when my parents couldn't afford to send just one kid to daycare or get a babysitter. Excuse me. And I was old enough that I could look after the three of us on my own for the couple of hours until my dad got home from work.
Wow.
And it was, get home from school, make sure the three of us all had a snack, and then start doing our homework.
Wow.
And then even at times starting dinner.
Wow.
And it progressed to, in high school, my mom would come and wake me up so I could go and get my brothers ready for school while she went back to bed for an hour. Yeah, I definitely was parenting the parents and my brothers and taking care of myself, and I didn't get to have a life.
Right. No, I mean, it's really unfortunate when you don't let your kids be kids, right? Because then they're constantly yearning for that like attention or that fun or like to feel seen, and that affects you as like a young adult. Like, how did that affect you not being seen as how you, looked at how other people treated you? Like, what were your emotions tied to that?
I can't really identify an emotion necessarily, but I felt small.
Yeah.
I felt like I wasn't seen, and I just was kind of there just to be the little worker bee and mom's little helper. And then I've even said too that I had to learn how to be a girl because I didn't have a positive female role model teaching me how to do my makeup, comb my hair, do all the feminine dainty things. I didn't have those examples.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't know how to be a girl. I know how to be a boy because I'm around them all the time.
Right. So how did
And
you
then,
learn those things? Who did you learn those from?
honestly, watching videos. Before YouTube came out, we had like MTV where they would do makeover shows or other channels, things like that. That's where I started to learn about makeup. And even still, I'm like, you want me to contour? I don't know how to do that shit.
I can do it. I did makeup for 19 years.
Did you?
I sure did.
I mean, I can do some pretty good like costume makeup for Halloween and put like a knife or blade or something into your skin. I can do that like really well.
That's so
But
awesome.
my own like face makeup, very, very simple.
And how did that like, even when as you got into high school and everything like that, did you find like you were attracting the right relationships, friends, or people you dated? Or did you still were you just like, I went to school, did my thing, I didn't really connect with anybody?
I was more the person who connected with everybody. I had one best friend in high school. We lost touch for a little while, but then got back in touch again in the last couple of years. But then it was like everyone in school, in high school, they still smoked weed. And I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. Wow. So I was a little bit left out of things because I didn't want to go and smoke weed with everybody. Wow. Which is fine. I still had friends. I still went and, went to parties and baseball games and football games and all that stuff. But I wasn't, going and getting stoned at break or anything. Wow. But then I also didn't date in high school. Yeah. Because I would see these stoner kids and I'm like, no. Wow. Like, I don't want to do that.
That's pretty amazing for, growing up with two parents that are doing drugs. It's so easy for the child to fall into that because, well, that's what they know, right? It's so easy to do that. And it's, it makes me feel popular. And for you to have, where do you think that strength came from?
I think my strength came from my grandmother, my dad's mom. She has always been and will continue to be my hero. She's been gone, God, 15 years now, but she's still my hero.
Yeah. My grandma is my grandma's birthday was this past Wednesday or Thursday. I don't even know. This week has been so crazy. That full moon was yep. She was my hero too. She still is my hero. I mean, I learned so much from her, and I felt like she was the only one that truly saw me for me. Knew my story, saw my story, knows what was going on. And she just continued to love me, support me. You know, I lived with her when I was a senior in high school. And, you know, I was pretty crazy at that time because I was super depressed. And like, you
Yeah.
know, there are times I was like, oh my God, I feel so bad. My poor grandma, you know, but she still, you know, carried me and made me get a job and made me like do things for me to support myself and learn how to do those things. I didn't know how to do those things, you know, and
Yeah.
you know, she was just, you know, when you have people in your life that just like love you for you without judgment, you know, and just like, yeah, you know, that shit happened and these great things happen and that makes you, you know,
Yep.
that's why you're unique. That's why you're so
Yep.
beautiful, you
Yeah.
know?
My grandmother, she taught me how to cook. She taught me how to sew. She taught
Yeah.
me just how to take care of other people because that's what she always did.
Yeah. Yeah. Was she around a lot when all this stuff was happening? Like, was your dad your mom's son, or was your grandma your mom's daughter?
It
Was
was my dad's mom.
your dad's
I
mom?
know,
Okay.
I know what you mean. It was
Say that wrong. Okay. And so,
my dad's mom. So
yeah,
she knew that he had done drugs because he was the guy that, you know, he grew up in the 70s, 60s and 70s.
yeah.
And he told my brother and I at one point, he's like, I've done every drug on the table, but I've never used a needle.
Mm,
And he did that in an attempt to try and get us to come and talk to him if we were ever curious about trying things. Yeah. Um, and on the one hand, I was like, all right, cool. But then it's like, that's kind of weird that you're going to come and tell me I did every drug on the table.
yeah.
So my grandma knows or knew that he did some stuff, but I don't know if she ever knew the extent of things. And by the time I was middle school, we lived 2 to 3 hours away. So
Yeah.
we'd see them, you know, holidays, birthdays. And then my brothers and I would go and spend a week at their house every summer, at least a week every summer.
Yeah.
Um, there was one instance where our house had caught fire, and so my parents had to work, so we stayed with grandma, and she kind of helped us out.
Yeah.
So, like she was always like the constant. She
Mhm.
was the rock. She's always like the matriarch of the family.
Right.
Um, and so when she passed, it kind of affected everybody. But yeah, I don't know the extent that she knew.
Right. Right. That's hard. I mean, I'm sure that was hard for her just in general to see what was going on, but I mean, thank God she probably just was like, well, I got to stay strong for these kids, you know, and do what I can to teach them outside of what they're learning. And
Yeah,
so like, how are your brothers? I mean, did they fall in that pattern? Did they follow what your pattern?
they fell into that pattern.
Mm.
I removed myself probably coming up on 10 years now, maybe 11 years. Um, Last I heard, one brother was still living at home, the older of the two, and the younger one had potentially moved out. I
Mhm.
don't know for certain, but I do know that they both have fallen into using drugs, at least smoking weed. The older of the two, I had heard that he would help somebody move for a bag of drugs. Whatever it was, that's what he would do.
Yeah. Does that make you feel like, because you had to raise them, does that make you feel guilty? Does that make you feel like, or I just did the best that I could and I'm glad that like I'm not in that space?
With my youngest brother, there's a little bit of I tried to get him out of it
Yeah.
when he was younger, like when he was in his late teens, early 20s. I tried to help him I helped him find a job. I was trying to help him with school. He was actually going to community college for a couple of years,
Uh,
but then it was like nobody could afford to pay for it. So he stopped going to school.
yeah.
And so there was a little bit of I felt like I failed my brother because I couldn't get him out of that.
Right.
Um, but then the other brother, when I did walk away and I, you know, kind of I wrote them all a letter and was like, look, I need to separate myself to take care of me.
Right.
He told me I was dead to him. And
Mm,
my response was, okay, that's the drugs and alcohol talking. Call me when you're clean and sober. And
wow.
I did
You're,
that.
you're so strong. Like you are so strong. I hope you know that. Like, I mean,
Terrifying at the time.
yeah, I mean, you're very, very strong, because it's really, really hard to see a family member that has an addiction. I mean, I have that in my family, and it's really, really hard. And, we do the best that we can. But the ultimatum is it's their choice.
Yeah.
And we want them to be like, look, you have this choice. You get to make a choice to choose happiness. But it's a long journey, right? It's a long journey to learn to love yourself and, like, be proud of who you are. And I hope and pray your brothers find that someday, and that's all
Yeah.
that's all you can do.
Well, that was one of the things that I learned too when I found that book, or my friend referred me to that book, was you can't fix somebody.
No.
They have to want it for themselves, and they have to realize that there is an issue before they can even consider fixing it.
Right.
And so that was huge for me, was I can't fix them.
Right.
I had to take care of me.
Yeah. And you had to, and it's funny because, like, I remember I was in high school and I read a book about, like, moms and daughters, and it really made me understand, like, my mom, and, like, how she was doing she did her best. Like, I know she did her best,
Yeah.
You might not agree with, the story I tell and my story, and that's okay. Right. I forgive her. I love her. I always hold space and grace for her. But because she couldn't communicate with me at that time, what she was going through, I was so thankful that this book fell into my lap, just like the book fell into your lap. It's amazing how these little things, like, can switch our brains to understand, and you never want to, like, understand it where you're enabling the other person. You just understand so you can live your life, be strong, learn what real love is.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
How old were you when you were like, I have to separate myself? And what did you do?
God, probably 19 or 20. I moved out of the house when I was 19, moved in with my boyfriend, who, that's a whole nother story. He was abusive too. We left the state, and I was gone for probably 5 years. And then he and I broke up because, like I said, it was abusive, and I had to move back home and basically start over. Wow. And in that, it was, I started seeing some of my friends from high school again, and, hanging around them, and they were wanting to do drugs. And I'm like, look, you guys, I need to try and find a job. Right. If somebody's going to drug test me, I'd like it to be clean. Right. Purposely wouldn't go to certain events or certain parties with people or hang out with certain people because I didn't want to put myself in those situations. And then I started, at that point, some of my friends had kids too, because I was 24, 25 at that point. Yeah. So people had kids, the kids were coming around, and, they'd come to my parents' house for a barbecue, and, everything's great. But then they'd all go out into the garage, and everyone would go spend 30, 45 minutes getting high. Wow. And there's kids around. Wow. And that's when I was kind of like, these are my friends' kids. You don't need to be doing that shit with kids around. Mm-hmm. And then when my nephews were born, that was really when I was like, no, I'm over it. I'm done. I'm not doing this. Right. I can't be around this. And I had moved out on my own, and I would tell them, hey, I don't have laundry at my apartment. Can I come do laundry at your house? And they're like, yeah, of course. Great. So I was giving them a warning, like, hey, I'm coming. Right. Go do what you're going to do before I get there. Right. So that you're not abandoning me or ditching me for 45 minutes. And I just sit there twiddling my thumbs, So I tried to set the boundaries, and they couldn't respect them. And that's kind of when I was like, you know what, I can't be around this. And I would see or overhear my parents having conversations where it's like, okay, we just got paid. Let's pay half the car payment so we can go get a bag of weed. Damn. And I'm like, okay, I get it. People want to smoke weed. I smoked weed for a couple of years too. I'm not a saint. Right. But when it's such a priority in your life that you can pay half of your car payment or partial bills, right, so you can go get your drugs too. Right. That to me was like ridiculous. And I
Right.
I even called my mom and she's like, no, that's not what I said. That's not what I meant.
Right.
Like, I don't care what you meant.
Right.
That's what you said. And that's why I'm questioning you.
Right.
And
It
at
makes
that point, too,
when
what's
you're,
that?
it makes it an addiction when you're like, oh, like it's not just like, oh, I'm relaxing, you know, like, no, that's
Yeah.
how an addict thinks about when they have
Yeah.
money.
Yeah. And there were other instances, like at one point my mom and I worked across the street from each other, so we would commute together sometimes. And then my car had broken down, so we were commuting together, and I had called her up one day and I said, hey, can I walk across the street, get your car, and go pick up lunch for both of us? She's like, yeah, great, perfect, what time? So I went over there and I went to get lunch, and I lifted up the center console, and her weed pipe was there.
Mm.
And I was like, Mom, if I'd gotten pulled over and a cop found that, I'd get in trouble for that.
Ah,
I snapped. I was like, that's not okay.
right.
That's what you're gonna do, fine. And
Right.
then two, why are you taking that to work?
Right. Right.
You work in an industry where that's not an okay thing.
Right.
Why are you taking that to work?
Right. It's like mind boggling, right? You're just like, I don't understand, but that's what addicts do. They just,
Mhm.
they will do it anywhere, anytime, any place, because that is the mind of an addict. And as long as they're like getting by, as long and until they get caught, is they'll never stop doing those kinds of things.
Yep.
you
Yep.
know? So when you dated someone that was abusive, do you feel like because that was maybe subconsciously what you had an agreement with yourself of, just like how you were, being loved by your parents and how they treated you, you just kind of automatically subconsciously were attracting that type of man in your life,
Well, and I think what attracted me to him too was he kind of reminded me of my dad.
Mhm.
They were in the same line of work,
Yeah.
blue collar type guys, construction workers. So, like somebody who's a laborer, a blue collar worker, they just have that smell to them. And
Yes.
being in construction and working around wood, he had that smell to him.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was familiar and comforting to me.
Right.
And at the time, when I first started dating him, he was great. He was sweet. He would take me out. He would open the door,
Mhm.
all these things. And then over time, it got abusive.
Wow.
He would go and use drugs every once in a while too, not as much as my parents did, but his dad grew weed in their house.
Wow.
So I found somebody else who did the same type of stuff. And then he also drank heavily and would get angry and aggressive.
Yeah.
And then it slowly progressed from there. And then it was verbal abuse, emotional abuse.
Yeah.
And then it finally got physical, and I walked out. I walked away.
Wow, Kassie. I mean, again, your strength is very, very powerful, because when women are beat like that, emotionally, physically, they are in a position where they are so weak, right? They become weak by these men where they're so weak that they control them. They make the women feel like, and vice versa, that they deserve it and everything like that for you to get out.
Yep.
I mean, it was probably, like, I know my mom's first husband, which is my real dad, he was 22 years older than her.
What?
And there was a point in my life when I was really depressed. I was, overweight. I was partying a lot, because I was depressed. Like I was just working and doing all these things. And I started dating somebody that was 22 years older. And I remember like calling my mom, and she was like, and she hung up on me, and because at that time, I was really still trying to be that like daughter that had a relationship with her mom, like
Yeah.
open communication, and like I just don't have that with her, and it's okay.
Yep.
And when she hung up on me though, I was like, oh my God, like I'm following the same pattern she did. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I know that I know, my mom probably doesn't regret that time of her life, because she did have me, she
Yeah.
had me. She was like, oh shit, I don't want to raise my daughter in this family. And that was like one of the most amazing things she did for me, was got me out of that family. Met my stepdad, who's been in my life since I was 1, right? And he's amazing.
Yeah.
Or he was amazing. And so but yeah, I was just like, holy shit, like, did you feel that way? You were just like, oh shit, I'm in the same pattern, I got to get out. Like,
It took a little while.
yeah, well, for
Because
sure.
I mean, I went through this cycle of abuse with him where it was like we'd have this big nasty fight and I was crazy, I was stupid, I was ugly, I was fat. And mind you, I was like 120 pounds. I was a rail.
Right.
And then I'd be like, no, I need to go. I need to get out of this. And he'd come back, no, I'm so sorry. I love you. Forgive me. It'll never happen again. And then it did. And it happened a number of times. And we were together for 5.5 years.
Wow.
It was like the first 2 years were great. And
Yeah.
then not so great. And it just progressively got worse and worse and worse. And he would accuse me of cheating on him. And I'm like, why? Why would I cheat on you? When would I cheat on you? Yeah. And I finally got to the point and was like, are you cheating on me? Are you projecting
I was just gonna
me?
say that. Yeah.
And he'd be like, no, you're stupid. You're crazy. I wouldn't do that. Like, come on.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, now you have a guilty conscience too. Got it.
Yeah. It's really interesting, like through life, when you're around enough people, when people start, actually throwing it on you so many times, you're like, you're probably the one doing that,
Yeah.
always is the case. I have found, because ever since I was 17 years old, when my grandma made me get a job, I've worked with people my whole life. And, I remember this, I worked at a flower shop, and then I would go get off my shift, walk up the couple doors, and there was a tanning salon. I work at a tanning salon. And there was this woman that came in every single week saying that she was not cheating on her husband, like saying she was not cheating. And like, after a while, I was like, dude, is she cheating on her husband? Like, why are you telling me this? I'm 16 years old. Like, you're a grown ass woman who's married with kids and everything like that. And like, but that's when I knew, like, and I've always known that people feel very comfortable talking to me. I don't know what it is. They just like, blah, 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 and that's when I realized that like, there's that personality trait of when you talk about it so much, you're actually deflecting it on the other person, because you're actually
yeah.
Insane. And we're so young. I mean, you were so young when you're in that relationship, right? And you're learning, and you're figuring things out. You're figuring out personality traits and what you want. And like, I mean, it's just amazing. And I wish that every woman who is being abused would get out of it like that until before they get so beaten down. And I mean, I'm sure so much, and you're like, never again do I want to be like that,
Well, and then the other thing too is I recognize it in other couples too. I see it. And I want so badly to go get out of there, but they've got to make the choice for themselves. They have to do it for themselves.
Totally.
And I've had friends like that, and I've told them, if you need that help, I'm here for you.
Right. And that's all you can do.
Yeah. In fact, I had a friend, God, it's been almost 4 years ago now. She ended up committing suicide because of her abusive relationship.
Oh, Kassie.
And it got to the point with her where she'd be telling me all these things with her ex-boyfriend, and it was bringing up the old memories from my ex-boyfriend. And I finally had to tell her, like, look, I need to walk away from this because it's affecting me personally.
Absolutely.
I can't do that. And then literally a week later, she was gone. And it crushed me, and it affected our whole friend group here. And, we still honor her and remember her. And, we all got our semicolon tattoos for her, or in her. She kind of inspired them. Yeah. But yeah, it was just like, I recognized it, and I knew that I needed to go away.
Right.
I couldn't save her.
Right.
Couldn't fix her.
I mean, that must be like, also a hard thing to go through, right? Because you're like, I just talked to you a week ago, I had to step away, and then this happened. It's like,
yep,
it's not your fault,
Yeah.
It's so sad, that like, this is why I'm doing this. I do this channel, right? I do this podcast. It's because it happens so frequently. I mean, even this week, there was 2 suicides this week in the military, just like they just can't do it. They feel like they're alone. They feel trapped. They don't feel heard. They feel all these things. And it was 2 men that committed suicide in the same week. And you're just like, oh my gosh, like that no one is coming to save us, and that's why I was like, well, I might as well use my voice and share these stories that, we have communities out there that we want to bring you in to learn, to teach you how to love yourself and not situations. You don't have to be in these situations. But at the same time, these people also have to make that choice. And that is the hardest thing to see. It is the hardest thing to witness, like even with my family member, I'm just like, fuck, man, like, can you please someday make that choice? Wake up, get out of it, like save your life, because 15 years of addiction, how much longer is it going to, it's super.
Yeah. And people question me all the time. They're like, but that's your family. How can you not talk to them? And I'm like, because of their addiction. They're like, oh, but that's still your family. And I go, actually, they've used so many drugs over the course of, 30, 20 something years, depending on which family member, they've killed their brain cells.
Right.
They're not the same person anymore. Their brain doesn't work the same way, because that's what addiction and drug use does. Yep. And that also took me a little while to realize. And I talked to I have 3 young nephews. I talked to one of their moms, and she's like, oh, but I still love your brother. He's still in there. And I'm like, I don't think he is.
Right.
Like, I think that you want to love him because he's the father of your child, but he's killed so many brain cells. He's not the same guy that you fell in love with.
Right.
There might be little pieces of him in there. Just like, that's not my brother that I grew up with. That's not my best friend that I grew up with,
And that's the thing that people hold on to. They hold on to those little pieces, right? Just like in an abusive relationship. Well, we had a good day on Sunday. You know what I mean? Well, what about the rest of the days? What about the rest of the month? Like, maybe those things will come out when they get sober. You know what I mean? But it's just like, and that's the other thing too, when it comes to like drugs or alcohol or any type of addiction, once they start that, their brain never develops. And it's like they stay at that age. You know what I mean? Even with PTSD, even with traumatic things in their life, or if you're in a position in your life where you're not taking care of the trauma in your life to move on, so you can add value to your life, you're going to be stuck at that age in your mind.
Yep. 100%.
So that's why it's like, you look at your family, you're probably like the most mature one, is because you've evolved, you've added value, you took care of yourself, you put you first, and, you put loving yourself first to get to that place where you are, to even like have the life that you have and meet the man of your dreams.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things I told you too was, I don't have a problem talking about it. I just don't advertise it. I have no problem talking to people about this. And then I've had other family members, aunts and uncles, cousins, whatnot, that are like, they question me, and I tell them, I don't need you to get it. I just need you to respect that I did what was best for me. And I tell friends the same thing. I had a friend back in California. Her dad passed away when she was young. Yeah. And she's like, I'd give anything to have another moment with my dad. And I said, and I appreciate that. I 100% appreciate that and respect that. Mm-hmm. My situation is different. Yeah. And all I need is for you to respect that I made the best decision for me.
Right. Right. Absolutely. I mean, some people in my life don't even agree with what I'm doing with my channel, because they're not even like seeing what I'm doing. They're not really truly opening their hearts and their minds. They might just pick this one story, my story, and just judge completely from there, mm-hmm. And it's okay. It's okay for people to disagree with me, because I know what I'm doing, like, y'all are not going to affect me. Like, I'm going to do whatever I can to help everybody, that I can. Like, mm-hmm. Of course, not like, you need to do this and you need to not give advice. Give dreams back, give love back, make them feel like they're worthy inside, because we're so many times in my life, I didn't feel worthy, like you probably felt that way too,
Oh
and,
yeah.
that is why, as long as like, and goes for everything, right, in the world going on, as long as if we can all wake up and just merely have the respect for each other of what our values are for us, the world would be such a different place.
Yeah. Respect it and don't judge it.
Yeah. So going through your life, you were, living back with your parents, and then eventually like moved out on your own again and was like, okay,
Yep.
I just need to do me,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
is that when you met Frank in that time, or?
Yeah. So I lived with my parents again for maybe 1 or 2 years. I don't remember exactly. But it was, like I said, starting over, learning how to do everything again, reacclimating to home, to California again. I wound up getting a job. My aunt actually helped me get a job at the same company she worked for, and I did pretty well there. Um, and then after, God, I think I was single for 4 or 5 years before I met Frank.
That's
And
good.
it was just a chance encounter. I was out with a couple of my girlfriends who they're the single mom. I mean, he tells the story of how we met so much better than I do. We had I had a couple of girlfriends that were the single moms, and we went to the radio station where we lived did $10 concerts for up and coming country artists.
Mm-hmm.
So they wanted their mommy's night out, and I was the designated driver for my two girlfriends. And Frank was out with his couple of buddies, and we just kind of crossed paths. His friend started dancing with one of my friends. Frank started dancing with the other friend. And then I came in, I'm like, I see what you boys are doing. I know exactly what's happening here. And I went into that protective, like big sister mode because these are my girlfriends.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the first thing I ever said to Frank, and it still cracks me up, cracks us both up to this day, was I told him you drink Rocky Mountain piss water. Because he was drinking a Coors Light.
And yep. There you go.
And then he gave me a hard time right back, and he goes, well, you drink Mexican piss water, because I was drinking a Corona. Like, it's the best beer they have here. It's a country bar, $10 tickets.
Yeah.
Not much. Yeah. And I will tell him still, I'm like, that's the night you knew you fell in love with me. He goes, no, that's the night I knew I wanted to sleep with you. When you continually let me sleep with you, that's when I fell in love with you.
Oh, you're like, thanks.
Yeah.
I know it was something else.
Yep.
And
then everything just kind of clicked with us. We
right.
We got along really well. We understood each other, even though we come from two very different worlds, different backgrounds.
Right.
We just kind of fell into, our masculine, feminine roles in our relationships. And I do what I do to take care of us. He does what he does to take care of us, and it works.
Yeah.
Obviously, we have our tiffs here and there, our disagreements, but it's been 11 years. We have friends, or we know people that have been married, had kids, and divorced in the amount of time we've been together.
Yeah.
We're like, I think we're doing something right.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's beautiful that you both can let each other be in your feminine or masculine energy and your roles.
Yep.
Have your roles together. I mean, that's like the ultimate thing that you want in a relationship, or that's what, I've learned, throughout my relationships and everything like that. And that's your family, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
And you guys have both like built your families around you that, might not be blood, but they're your families. Like I consider the Den my family,
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. Right. And so now, do you ever think like, you haven't talked to your family in like 10 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And do you still in the back of your mind, just like, I know this is like for me too, like maybe someday they'll change and they'll get to be in my life again. Cause I know that like, I'm just not desperate, but I'm like, there's so many moments in my life, so many days where I'm just like, man, I wish I had my mom in my life. I wish we were friends. I wish, we did family functions and stuff like that, because it's my mom. But at the same time, it's like, we both need to be treated how we just both deserve, and that comes from me too, right?
Yeah.
And do you ever feel that way?
Um, Actually, not anymore.
Yeah.
There have been times where even Frank has questioned me, where he's like, "Are you sure? You
Yeah.
sure you don't want to reach out to him? Even
Right.
just write him a letter?"
Right.
Even people are like, "Maybe you just write him a letter forgiving them
Right.
for
Yep.
yourself." And
Yep.
it's like, I don't want them to have my address. Um,
Yeah. So
they,
that's
my
big.
Yeah, I mean, my parents ambushed me once several years ago. I was working at Bevmo and they showed up at my store on like New Year's Eve just
Oh,
to like slip me a Christmas card. And I was like, "What are you doing? You're
wow.
coming to my store on one of the busiest nights of the year. How dare you?"
Right.
And I told them to get out of my store. Thankfully, they listened, but it was like, I don't want them to have my address and show up for that.
Yeah.
And it was like before we got engaged, Frank was like, "Tradition, like it's important to me. I want to be able to go and ask your dad permission to marry you." I
Mhm.
was like, "I appreciate that and I love you for that, but you
Absolutely.
don't have to do that.
Yeah.
You're marrying me. It's
Yep.
my decision."
Yeah.
Um, so then even we just got married a year ago. I didn't miss them.
Yeah.
I thought that I might have had a moment like dress shopping where I would be like, "Oh my God, I don't have my mom here."
Right.
Or getting
Right.
ready the morning of, "Oh my God, I don't have my mom here."
Right.
Not once did
Yeah.
those thoughts cross my mind. Because from what I know of them, and if they're still doing
Yeah.
any type of drugs, they would have found a way to make it about them or cause a scene.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a moment at the wedding where it was like, you know what? I had two blood relatives at the wedding, my
Wow.
twin nephews
Mm-hmm.
who
Mm-hmm.
are 11 years old.
Yeah.
And they walked me down the aisle. That
Oh,
was my only blood relatives at my wedding.
yeah.
But Frank's family has taken me in,
Oh.
like open arms. His mom thinks of me as her daughter.
Mhm.
I call his parents mom and dad or Mama B.
Oh.
um, so his dad's told me, he's like, "You can come visit whenever you want, leave him at home."
Yeah.
So that's my family now. They're a little intense because it's not what I grew up with, what I'm accustomed to,
Right. Right.
but that's my family.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
of course my dogs and my cat, that's our family too.
Of course. Of course. Yeah. I got to meet Daniel's mom last month, and like she was just such a lover, and she like knitted me some like kitchen stuff. I'm like, she's so cute. This beautiful Italian woman.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I definitely, I've always had these growing pains, but it was just recently where, it's when I went to, church with Daniel to go see Scott and Ann talk about and tell their story. And it was amazing. And, oh my gosh, my phone's not on silent. Hold on. And just to tell me your phone's not on silent anymore. And the speaker, it was actually a really great church. I don't really go to church anymore, but it wasn't like packed in a box of religion. It was just like God is outside the box and whatever. And
Okay.
talking about forgiveness, and I was like, I forgiven my mom a long time ago. I don't know if I've actually ever told her that. So I reached out and I told her I forgive her and all these things. And I'm not going to go into like, what she said and anything like that. I mean, it didn't go as well as I thought, but I reached out, I put it on her table. Like, I'm over this shit, right? Like, I forgive you. I
Yeah.
love you. I'm happy for you where you're at in your life. And that's it. And it was at that point when I was like, okay, well, what do you need? What do you need from me? I still have never heard back from her to this day, but it has made me think of it less. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, Brittany, you still are doing good. You have amazing people in your life. It's just one of those things in the back of your head, like naturally where you like yearn for these things. But at the same time, it's like, I'm never going to change who I am, because I truly love myself, and I'm not going to go
Yeah.
down into anybody's problems. I rather pull them into my power. Right. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's all you can do. Right. And so it's like, okay, that was great. I'm moving on. And if it happens, that's amazing, because I have, 4 younger siblings that understand and don't understand. And sometimes it's really difficult. And, like, but I'm so thankful, I have Daniel and I have my uncle and aunt and I had my grandma. Like, we get to learn from these amazing people that love us, like, just unconditionally. And it's just amazing. And like having Frank in your life and his family, it's like, we're so blessed.
Yeah. And I have times where friends or acquaintances, coworkers, whoever, as they come into my life and they learn about my history and my past, they're like, how are you still standing? Like, I just handled it the best way that I knew how. And I tell people, I talk about it. I don't hide from it. I don't deny any of it.
Right.
Even if somebody tries to tell me, oh, well, that's not really how it went. It's like, well, that might be how you remember it. This is how I remember it. This is how I lived it.
Right.
So you don't get to tell me what my memories are.
Thank you. Thank you for
that. That was like the story I told you about when we were fostering that puppy last summer. And my brother's girlfriend was like, well, that's not how it went. I'm like, you weren't even around then.
Right.
You don't know what you're talking about. So go away.
Yeah, it's really interesting how like other people that were in that time of your life, like remember it so differently, or like, oh, that didn't happen. That didn't happen. And you're like, that is my story. Why would I lie about it?
That didn't happen, or you don't need to talk about that.
Right. But I think what you and I have done is that we did stand up.
Yeah.
We did talk about it. And like, I was gifted with always talking about things. I have never not said what was on my mind or talk about it. I was super open with my best friends, parents, and, got to learn love. Like, that is because like, I really always have been super vulnerable. And I think that's what has always made me stand up and stand up and stand up and stand up, because you get to choose to stand up or not.
Yeah.
And that's, and I'm so proud of you, and like, learning all these things, even though it's so hard to stand up at that age as a child, to really stand to your power at that age, and really learn to like, okay, I got to take care of myself. That's really, really hard. A lot of people can't do that. And so I think, it's so beautiful to see this story and see where you are now. And like, I love watching you and Frank do all these things and see you guys all the time and growing your business. And, you're growing this. It's not just like the cigars, like we were saying, coming back to cigars, right? You're building a family.
Yep. We're building a life.
You're building a life, you're building a community and everything like that. And so I just think it's so wonderful. And if there's anything else that you want to say to the audience out there of like, any like real passionate ways of how you make your choice to stand on your feet, what would you say?
I think the biggest thing is trust yourself. Yeah. Listen to your gut, listen to your intuition, because that's always going to be right. Right. You might question yourself up here, but your heart's telling you, I need to be over here. This is the right way. Where I'm at right now is not the right way. Yeah. So trust yourself.
Yes, I think that's brilliant. I think it's brilliant because our gut is always right. It's always right. And for anyone who like believes in a higher power, believes in God, like usually that's who it is, like trying to like, hey, go this way. Come on, you can do it. I'm telling you, listen, trust yourself, and listen.
It's that angel on your shoulder saying, this is the way you want to go.
Yes. Yes. I love that. I really love that. That's so awesome. That's so awesome. Thank you so much, Kassie, for, being on my channel and taking your time out of a Saturday, for me. And I just appreciate you so much. And you guys, I will put in the link below about their cigar company, their Instagrams, if you want to reach out, just to ask questions or tips on, what they're doing. Or you guys, if you want to get some badass cigars, I mean, there you go. So I'll put that below. Oh, I just made it rhyme.
Now you're a rapper.
I'm a rapper. Free Lady the Rapper, just hit the news, right? Just hit the shelves. So thank you so much. I hope you have an amazing weekend, the rest of your weekend. And I'm really excited for your other weekend coming up here.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
So excited for you. That's going to be
Me
amazing.
Me too.
Just so you guys know, for as a woman, it's really, really important to do boudoir photo shoots. And that's what Kassie actually won with Leandra. She owns Badass Boudoir. I will have her on my channel shortly. I haven't asked her, but I know she's going to come on. And it's really about, it's not for our men, right? When you do photo shoots like this, it's for yourself to feel empowered as a woman. And it's so beautiful. And I'm really excited for you. I can't wait to hear all about it.
I can't wait to see the pictures.
I'm so excited. So ladies out there, do it for yourself. And of course, your partner gets to enjoy these things too, but feel empowered, feel your beauty, feel your feminine energy, and just rock that shit. Like it's so amazing. So do it. Anyways, you guys, hope you have a great Monday, since this always airs on Monday. And thank you again so much, Kassie, for coming on. And we will talk back soon.
All right. Thank you. Have a good rest of your weekend.
You too.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Bye.